Welcome back to Learning with Cases. In the first module, we covered off a basic introduction to cases as a method of learning. We talked about what a case is, why we use them to learn, and the skills that can be developed by learning with cases. In this module, we're going to cover off the case method process. By the time you finish this tutorial, you should have a good understanding of the best and most effective ways to tackle and learn with cases. We approach cases in 3 stages. The first and most time-intensive stage is the individual preparation. In this stage, you'll go through the case in great detail individually, preparing a short and long cycle analysis, ultimately developing your recommendations and action plans for the solution to the case. The second stage is the small group discussion. In this stage, you will take your individual analysis and discuss and compare it with a small group of your peers. You'll compare all elements of your analysis, including your definition of success, the critical issues, your decision criteria and alternatives, and finally your recommendations and action plan. Studies show that this small group discussion further enhances your learning through the case process. The final stage is the large group discussion, which will take place during our classroom sessions. During the large group discussion, students will present their analysis and recommendations, and we will discuss and evaluate the various approaches and recommendations, further enhancing our learning. Now that we've had an overview of the process at a high level, we'll take the next few minutes to look in more detail at the individual preparation component of the case method process. The first step in individual preparation is the short cycle process. The short cycle can be thought of as a quick overview of the case that takes place before we start digging into the case in any great level of detail. Students will often jump right into the case, reading and rereading the details as time slips away. We find that by taking the time to conduct a brief overview of the case and then setting it aside for 24 to 48 hours to let it sink in reduces the amount of time that students have to spend on each case. The short cycle should take place between 24 and 48 hours before you start your in-depth analysis of the case, and should take you between 30 and 60 minutes to complete. We conduct the short cycle in order to get a good feel for the case before diving in depth. The first steps in completing the short cycle are to review the opening and ending paragraphs. By reading these 2 sections first, we start to get a better understanding of who the decision maker is and what position or title they hold. This will help us get a better understanding of the role that we play as we step into the case. Reading these 2 sections also gives us a better idea of what appears to be the big issue that we face as an organization or as an individual. This also helps us to understand the significance of the issue that we face. After reading these 2 sections, we should also have a good idea as to why the issue has arisen now and when it needs to be resolved. In other words, after reading these sections, we should have a better understanding of the urgency involved in the decision that we're facing. And finally, reading these 2 sections should start to give us an idea of how we're going to solve this issue. We should start to get an idea of the tools and analyses that we'll need to conduct in order to find a solution to our problem. The next step is a quick review of the exhibits. This will give us a better understanding of what information is provided within the case and can also give us an idea of the types of analysis that will be required in developing our recommended solution. From there, you'll quickly review the case headings and subtitles and then skim the body of the case to get a better understanding of the information and tools you have to work with and the types of analysis that will be required. Once you've completed these steps, read any assigned questions to allow yourself to reflect on the answers before digging into the case any deeper. At this point, you also will want to develop the initial draft of your definition of success. The initial draft may be modified after a detailed review and analysis of the case, but developing a draft at this point gives us a good starting point to understand what it is we're trying to achieve. We'll talk more about the definition of success in an upcoming tutorial. Once you've completed the short cycle and put it aside for 24 to 48 hours, you're ready to begin the long cycle stage of your individual preparation. The long cycle preparation should be completed prior to the small group discussion stage, and this stage can take anywhere between 5 to 9 hours depending on the complexity of the case. In this stage, we conduct an in-depth analysis of the case and develop our recommendations for solving the critical issues to help us achieve our definition of success. The first step in this stage is a detailed reading of the case. In this stage, it's important to understand that reading the case is not even-paced, with equal emphasis placed on each word, table, figure, or exhibit. You can use the following diagram to help you determine where to spend most of your time reading. Spend some time reading the opening paragraph in detail, as it often provides a lens to the case, identifying the key players and the decisions or issues that need to be resolved. The next major area to spend time reading is the organizational and industry background section. This section is often the largest section of the case, providing general background information on both the organization and the industry, framing up the issues that need to be solved or the decisions that must be made. We often find hints or clues in this section that can be useful in the development of our SWOT analysis. The background section is often followed by a more detailed section describing the specific area for focus of our analysis. For example, we may be provided specific or detailed information on product mix or target market or the competitive environment and so on. Again, this gives us some details that can be used later on in our analysis. From there, the case will typically lead into a description of the specific problem or decision facing the organization. We will use the information in these 4 sections to develop our analysis, allowing us to finalize our definition of success and identify our critical issues. We will discuss this process in more detail in a future tutorial. As you continue your detailed reading of the case, you'll often find that the case provides a list of alternatives to be considered. It's important to keep in mind, however, that these are not necessarily the only or best alternatives to be considered. These are simply the alternatives being considered by the character in the case. As you complete your detailed reading, keep an open mind to other potential alternatives that might provide a better solution than the alternatives presented in the case. And finally, we come to the concluding paragraph or two that typically look back to the opening paragraphs, reinforcing the time constraints and restating the task at hand. Once you have read the case in detail, you will move into the analysis of the case. By reviewing and analyzing the details of the case, you will be able to develop a concise yet comprehensive definition of success and identify the critical issues that must be addressed in order to achieve your definition of success. From there, you will generate alternative courses of action along with the decision criteria against which you will evaluate each alternative. You will then conduct further analysis to assess each alternative, allowing you to select the best solution and develop your action plan. This wraps up Module 2 and hopefully provides you with a better understanding of how to approach and solve cases. In upcoming tutorials, we'll take a closer look at solving cases using the case process, including crafting our definition of success statement, identifying critical issues, developing alternatives and decision criteria, as well as selecting our recommended solution and building our action plan.